Welcome back, dear viewers, and as you've seen on your screens, the first day of Muharram here in London, and we've shown you live scenes or scenes from Karbala as they change the flag, signifying the first day of Muharram. And it's, of course, the start of the mourning process, the commemoration for the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's a time where once the flag changes, everyone within Karbala, outside Karbala, the whole world really begins that mindset of mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And they've changed their ways, they've prepared for the 10 days ahead of them, and the first day is upon us. So that's what you've just seen on your screens, some amazing scenes there. And every single year, you know, we gear up towards Muharram, we anticipate the changing of the flag. And as you've seen there, it's an emotional, very highly charged piece of acts that happens every single year, which signifies, again, the first day of Muharram, the changing of the flag from the dome of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I'm joined at this moment in time, and this segment, this part of the program, is the verses of love aspect of Morning Baraka, where we take a bit of an insight or a deep dive into the reciters of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, looking into the different forms of recitations. Of course, because when it comes to Muharram, one of the main aspects is the emotional attachment to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and the main way of emotionally attaching yourself to the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is through the tears and through the commemorations and through the recitations and poetry. And as such, every single episode throughout this series, we will have a reciter or a poet in which we'll take a deep dive into their lives and shed light on what the challenges they face when it comes to writing poetry or reciting for the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So I am absolutely honored to be joined by my dear friend Nouri Sardar, who has taken his time to be with us. Thank you so much for your time, Nouri. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Throughout our years, we've had times where every now and then we get to take some time out of our busy schedules to really have a bit of a heart-to-heart in terms of the latest when it comes to poetry or recitations. And of course, your field is quite different to my field, but they're more or less interlinked in the sense that the poetry that you write, the reciters from my perspective will take and recite on the pulpit. So it's good to have some time to really take away from the busy schedules. And
sometimes in front of the camera as well.
Yeah, sometimes in front of the camera, outside the camera, so it's always great. So no, really appreciate your time. I guess going straight into the topic, for when it comes to Muharram, of course, you gearing towards Muharram and the days of Muharram, you begin in your mind to start writing poetry. And what I wanted to focus on today, and I know from last year that you released a track or a video named Revival. And it's a very interesting name we'll allude to in a second. But Revival is quite an interesting listen from my perspective, because it's quite different to what you've usually done. In the sense, the whole discussion about what's traditional and non-traditional and modern, and everyone's now changing their perception of what's traditional and what's modern and what should we do in order to spread the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So from your perspective, I mean, what is it about Revival? What's the reason?
So I think, as you know, every piece of art or every track or whatever you do as a creative art, every time you put something forward, it reflects who you are at that moment in your life, which I'm sure you'll agree with as well. So if you look at, for example, the first two albums that we did together, they were very much reflective of who I was at that time. And in terms of also where I was in the realm of English poetry, of course, I was just starting to I'd been writing for a few years, but I was just starting to kind of get up and recite. You were just starting to kind of like recite as well. And it was really the first album of its kind to put forward both English poetry and recitation together. Those are the first two albums. And I think at that time, English poetry and my English poetry was very primitive in that all it really was an adaptation of the Arabic style of writing lamentations, or the Urdu style of writing lamentations, and putting it together. After that, what followed after that is I wanted to experiment by working with reciters of different styles. Obviously, those two albums were very Iraqi in their style. So I wanted to work with people who recite in Pakistani tone, Iranian tone, Iraqi tone as well, and multiple reciters just to show that, the poetry can be picked up by anyone, but each time a different reciter of a different culture recites it, it gives a completely different life to it, which shows, of course, how amazing reciting is as well. That was like a trilogy of albums in itself. And that obviously as well is a testament to the plethora of reciters that we have and different styles that we have, and the effort that reciters put in as well into the albums. Once I'd done all that, about 6-7 years, and this is getting quite personal now, but I was in a place where, alhamdulillah, I felt like I've achieved so much and had somewhat of an impact on the Shia sphere. But I was then asking myself, where am I, what relevance do I have in the world outside that sphere? Inside the sphere, you're Ali Fadl, you're Nouri Sardar, you're doing something for the community, alhamdulillah, which is a great honor. But the minute you step outside that, the minute you go to, anonymous, he says, who are you? I say, oh, I'm Nouri Sardar, I write poetry about the Ahl Bayt. It doesn't mean anything to them, right? He's asking, how are you impacting the world? What are you doing to help me? So I thought that, and it was a very scary place for me to be in because I had never really dabbled in spoken word poetry. I think that I'm still very horrible at it as well. But at the same time, like, I felt like I had to not exchange what I had for spoken word poetry, but expand my horizons and try and do things that had an impact on the outside world. So did
you feel like you had to learn something totally new?
Yeah, it was very scary. But I thought, unless I try it, I'm going to be stuck in the same circle.
Yeah, just doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing for the rest of my life. And you need to progress. I mean, veering off topic, I know a lot of people in the reciters world, they revere people like Basim, right? As you know. But the one thing we always forget about Basim is the reason he is Basim is because he kept challenging the status quo, because he kept doing something new.
He kept innovating.
Everyone keeps trying to be Basim, but people are forgetting that Basim is continually trying to be someone else, right? So in that sense, what I did was then I went out, I did a spoken word piece about the Muslim ban by Trump, about Grenfell Tower, I did one. And really, I just wanted to tackle issues that weren't necessarily about the Ahl Bayt, but were important to me. Things that I believed in, things that I cared about, things that I was passionate about, and essentially expand my horizons. So when Muharram came,
So how long, just before you get to Muharram, so how long had this process of contemplation been going on? Grenfell Tower, for example, the ban, the Muslim ban. How long is that going on from the traditional to the
In terms of the creative aspect, I would say it's always been going on. You're always asking yourself.
No, as in, for example, you suddenly one day decided, I want to start a poetry or start a poem on, for example, the Muslim ban. Well, what was your first poem which was out of the traditional Shia?
It was that.
The Muslim ban one,
It was that, yeah.
Okay, and then after that came what, Grenfell?
The Grenfell one, yeah.
Okay, so there was a process of like, there's a bit of a change there.
Yeah.
So you didn't do anything traditional. Was it a conscious choice, or was it because out of season? Because within the Shia world we have seasons, right? Muharram, Ghadir, Arba'in, Ramadan. So was it because it's out of season, let me try to do something different? Or?
So being frank, as a creative, and I'm sure you'll share this as well, we have very, very fragile, we have very bad self-esteem, right? So the minute we feel like people don't care about art anymore, we feel like, what's the point of doing it? Kind of, not completely, but like, let's be honest, there's like an inner anxiety to our art. It's like when you don't get that many likes on Facebook. I know it sounds really,
no, you're
materialistic.
absolutely right. Actually,
when you don't get an invite to a certain place, you're like, okay,
what's going on?
Do I not matter anymore? And that is ultimately the ego, which is a very bad thing. But at the same time, it's a creative anxiety that you have as well. You're like, okay, I have a talent and I want to express it, but people aren't. I wouldn't say they wouldn't care about it, but they're not appreciating it. It's not affecting them anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, what's the point of even doing it then? You know what I mean?
People become numb to it, maybe.
People become numb to it, and it's like, people are saying, oh, that's great. But no one's saying, wow, that changed my life. And as someone as a creative who exerts your creative talent onto someone else, that's what you want, because it's something that's changing your life, so you want it to change their life as well. So in that sense, I was in that kind of place of uncertainty, and I really wanted to just do something that I enjoyed again, because it comes to a point where you keep doing the same thing again and again. You're doing it for the sake of it and not because you enjoy it. Of course, it's service to Ahl Bayt, but that's a very broad term, in the practical sense of it. You're not doing something that you enjoy sometimes. You're just doing it because you're used to it, right? So when the Muslim ban thing happened, I just felt like I wanted to. I don't know where it came from. I just felt like I had to write something.
And that was your form of
protest.
Service, protest.
It was my form of
yeah.
protest, and this is also comes back to revival. Is it looks at what's the point of remembering Imam Hussein? What's the point of lamenting Imam Hussein? The point is that you stand up when you see things like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the way I know how to stand up is through poetry. So that I remember, I wrote it in a day, I recorded it in a day, and I released it straight away. And I was so scared as to what the reaction would be because I had no idea what people would think.
Muslim ban or revival?
Muslim ban.
Okay.
Revival as well. I'll get that in a bit. Muslim ban, but I was like, people are going to say it's rubbish. No one's going to care. People are going to say, what the hell are you doing? But alhamdulillah, even though I think it was a horrible, horrible poem, it just like the poetry about the Ahl Bayt that I'd done in the past, it touched people, which is why I think they appreciated it.
Yeah.
With
Just moving. I totally appreciate what you're saying. Just moving on, I guess from the process was that Muslim ban, Grenfell Tower, which is another amazing piece as well, and very relevant to today's society.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, "Oh, Imam Hussein history." Well, what's that got to do with now? But this is now. Like this is standing up for for justice and oppression, right? So it came to Muharram, and you thought, okay, I've got the traditional, and I've now got, I've dipped my toes in this new modern way of writing and thinking and this creative aspect that I have, right? So you brought the two together. How did it work with the revival?
So when Muharram came, I was in a very bad, dare I say, place where I didn't even want to do an album because I just felt like I wouldn't be giving it justice because it wasn't really in my interest at the time. But at the same time, of course, as someone, when Muharram comes, as you know, you always got this feeling of I want to do something for Imam Hussein kind of thing. So I thought I'd put a track together, a spoken word track, and just really look at the core value of Imam Hussein, because I felt like a lot of reciters and poets do a fantastic job when it comes to Muharram, commemorating Imam Hussein. And we have majalis and everything, but I was just in this state of mind of what relevance does it have to the wider world? Are we in a danger of keeping our commemoration inside the mosque and doesn't affect the wider world? This is one thing I continuously say all the time, and one thing I say to myself as well is that in Muharram, we as the Shia, especially our speakers as well, have the opportunity to tell the wider world what the solutions to their problems are, because we have all the answers, right? But unfortunately, I feel like we use that to look inwardly. Speak about community issues, speak about historical issues, which are all great, but when you're not thinking about the wider world, you don't have relevance to the wider world, and that's the whole point. If you're keeping the message of Imam Hussein to yourself, then really you're doing it injustice. Right. So my intention was to really tackle that, and just from a very basic level, remind people: listen, if you're gonna commemorate Imam Hussein, it's important that you look within yourself and ask yourself, have you actually picked up on the lessons to Imam Hussein? Because I feel like we also facing a very, I would call it dangerous mentality in the communities that we have, whereas the Majlis of Imam Hussein is the be-all and end-all. Whereas the way I see it is it should be the springboard to greatness. You go to the Majlis of Imam Hussein, you learn to be better, and then you go out into wider society and you better society. And that's where I think it should be. And that's what I was trying to tackle in that poem.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess there's so much more to discuss when it comes to revival. I've taken a very keen interest because I love the way that, as you mentioned, we're pretty much irrelevant to the outside world when we speak about only our minor community issues, like whatever it is that goes on in the community. And we need to open up. And you're right, like essentially the message of Imam Hussein is, we keep on saying it. We've said it year in,
we say it every year.
Yeah. It's a universal message. The whole of the world should be able to learn from it. But what are we doing for the whole of the world to actually get that message?
You take this message to the oppressed black communities in the US. You take this message to the raw. You take a message to anyone. They would cling to it and they would learn it. But the problem is we're too concerned with making the perfect majlis and not thinking beyond that. Exactly. Which is the problem,
Exactly. And I guess we'll take a bit of an insight into that. We'll show you a couple of minutes of the revival track. And for now, thank you so much for your time, Nouri. Really, really appreciate it. We're definitely going to see you more during the series of Morning Baraka. But after the segment, we're going to be joined by my co-host, Zahra as well as Masuma Jafar, who are going to be speaking about sacrifice under the program of Dear Masuma. So, Zahra, over to you.